Okay, chapter 4 in your textbook is the chapter that deals with uh, the systems approaches and looks specifically at 3 different systems theories. So to begin with, understanding where systems theory came from is basically a reflection on where you've been. Chapter 2, you looked at some of the sort of mechanistic approaches, the classical approaches to organizations, looking at it as a machine. And then chapter 3 was sort of the rebellion against that, the human relations and human resources approaches. They wanted to look much more at the individual as more than simply a laborer. Systems theory takes a little bit further, and it's probably easiest illustrated with simply the mathematical equation of 1 + 1 = 3. That the movements of the individual parts, the components, is greater taken holistically, taken together. So systems theory is very holistic, and this sort of helps give you a little bit of an overview of that. So one of the things that helped me in particular, and I think I want to show you this because I believe that it will help you, is if you have a general understanding of the overarching general systems theory, you'll better understand the specific approaches that are brought up in this particular chapter. So I have a very short video clip I want to show you that deals with general systems theory, but I think it will really help you.
The complex systems found in science, society, and nature, and formulate common laws that apply to virtually every scientific field. With an emphasis on wholeness, it claims that any phenomenon cannot be properly understood until it is seen as a system of many associated parts. There are things that emerge in groups of parts that are not witnessed in those parts alone. General systems theory focuses on the system's structure instead of on the system's function. It proposes that complex systems share some basic organizing principles, irrespective of their purposes, and that these principles can be modeled mathematically. The idea of the whole as more than the sum of its parts is as old as Aristotle. But the idea that there are characteristics of systems that can be applied to all systems can be traced directly to Ludwig von Bertalanffy. Von Bertalanffy was a Hungarian biologist educated in Vienna, a member of the famed Vienna School. He first proposed systems theory in the 1940s as an attempt to use the word system to describe those principles which are common to systems in general. He emphasized that real systems are open to and interact with their environments, and that they can acquire new properties through emergence, resulting in continual evolution. His objective was to bring together under one heading the organismic science that he had observed in his work as a biologist. Systems theorists see common principles in the structure and operation of systems of all kinds and sizes. They promote an interdisciplinary science adapted for a universal application with a common language and the area of concepts. Rather than reducing an entity, such as the human body, to the properties of its parts or elements, the organs or cells, system theory focuses on the arrangement and the relations between these parts, which connect them into a whole. This particular organization determines a system which is independent of the concrete substance of the elements. So general systems theory, therefore, is a general science of wholeness.
Okay, so you get the general idea that organizations, when you take systems, general systems theory, and you approach it, or apply it rather to organization, you're basically arguing that organizations are complex entities that interact with their environment, must interact with their environment, and have a lot of particular unique characteristics. Some of the 3 that are examined in the beginning of this is looking at system components, processes, and properties. So they're listed here, and they are somewhat self-explanatory for the most part. Under system processes, probably one of the most significant is that of feedback, and there's a lot of emphasis on feedback in some systems approaches. And in terms of system properties, holism, the idea that the sum is greater. Equifinality means that there are many different ways to accomplish something. Negative entropy basically means that it sustains, it doesn't end in death. And requisite variety simply argues that the complexity of the organization needs to match the environment in which it resides. Looking at some specific general systems approaches or theories, and there are three. There's cybernetics, Weich's, and new science system theories. So the first is cybernetics, and cybernetics deals with this process by which an organism reaches its goals. And within cybernetics, the component that's emphasized the most is feedback, and particularly the modification of that feedback that increases likelihood of accomplishing those goals. The next approach is Carl Weich's theory of organizing, and his approach is very environmental. It's very much about reducing what he equivocality, which is basically ambiguity, and that we strive and organizations strive to have as much clarity as possible, that they don't like the ambiguity that unpredictability creates. And so therefore, in order to eliminate that, they need to make sense of things, and there are some predictable patterns that organizations go through in order to eliminate that ambiguity. And this concept of sense making, which is a big emphasis in Weich's theory, is all about reducing that ambiguity. So, and when they talk about assembly rules or communication cycles, those are just some of the profound categories, the idea of self-organization that people go through or organizations go through. Next, we have the new science or systems theories approaches, and this took a couple of different ideas, and it was new in the sense that it was arguing that systems aren't necessarily predictable. They don't necessarily follow patterns, that yes, they strive toward equilibrium, that idea of making sense, but not always in a logical or linear way. And there's some research that touches on the notion of chaos theory a little bit, comes into play here. That it's all about adaptability of organizations. And some interesting research on here, but again, you can go to the text for details. The last section of the chapter focuses on different methods for studying organizational systems, and there are three: network analysis, modeling techniques, and case studies. Network analysis and modeling techniques are both mathematical approaches. It was very interesting to apply mathematics to understanding organizations, but that's what this very much is about. And network analysis is all about analyzing the networks of relationships within an organization. And so analyzing those communication relationships within. And here you have properties of the network itself, properties of the links, network roles, whether somebody is a loner, works to be the bridge or the liaison between others. In terms of modeling, here we have mathematical models that are created, so it's very statistical, and it allows researchers to access those relationships, and the emphasis is on computer simulations. And the last one are case studies, case analyses, and it's for this reason that there are so many case studies within this book, because you learn a lot by really examining particular situations and applying theory to them. So I know very much that systems theory is a little bit dry, a little bit dull, a little bit boring. I know even in rereading the chapter again, for me it was several sections I had to just put the book down and kind of shake my head and wade my way through it, and it's by no means my first, second, third. I've encountered systems theory quite a bit, and yet it can be a little bit dense.